I always talk about finance and the operations of finance as a balance, I think, between access versus safety, whatever type of investor you are. And my fear coming out of this is there's going to be a lot of political grandstanding, and we're not going to get to some of the fundamental questions here about whether investor welfare is safe, given the changes that we've seen in terms of access to financial products. What are you expecting?
Well, I expect some grandstanding. That's what Capitol Hill grillings are all about, right? I mean, you've got hometown lawmakers who want to make sure that back on their news at home that they're seen as being particularly well thought out about their position on the Reddit GameStop frenzy here. But there are some really legitimate questions that need to be asked here. You know, the free trading platforms, does more need to be done to make sure that individual investors who maybe have never traded before and are trading for free have the right information and the right skills to be able to put themselves potentially at risk here? Also about the flow of trading. You're going to hear from the Citadel Securities as CEO, you're going to hear from the people who run sort of the pipeline of trading about whether there should be different kinds of trading settling times, and that's what some of them are arguing for. And you're going to hear from one of these sort of Reddit bandits, you know, this guy who was the roaring kitty character who was really pushing this. You know, was this market manipulation? And was there potentially a systemic risk to the whole system because of what was going on in GameStop? That's what I think you really want to get to the bottom of here in these hearings.
Yeah, there always has to be someone called Roaring Kitty to enlighten our day in terms of congressional hearings like this, quite frankly. I was just looking at the individual opening statements, and by far the RobinHood CEO takes the prize for the longest statement. So it's going to be quite fascinating to see what he has to say and some of the questions that he gets asked. But to your point, it's a very valid one. Both he and the boss of Citadel say there are fundamental changes that can be made, and they can be made very quickly, to address some of the challenges we face, whether it's the settlement mismatch, when you do a trade and then that trade settles, there's a 2-day gap, and that causes funding mismatches, but also transparency over clearinghouses. When they ring the person like RobinHood and say, hey, you've got to stop trading because we need you to hand over billions of dollars worth of cash. I think these are valid arguments. My fear is that they get lost in the sort of beating up of hedge funds that will probably take place.
Yeah, should it be a one-day settlement? Should it be a real-time settlement? What should that look like? And what's the best for individual investors? I think you might also have some lawmakers who are going to be asking about the sheer act of short selling. You know, the SEC many years ago was told it had to start to look into and maybe change some of the rules around short selling, and did not. So will there be some sort of discussion here about just naked shorts and short selling? And, you know, because the individual investor sometimes, I think, can't, honestly, you can't get your mind around the fact that if you go short in some of these elaborate options trades, you can lose money to infinity, right? It's not like you buy a stock and you lose the money you invested in it. It's a very different, more highly leveraged game on the other side. And you've got individual investors who are going on Reddit, you know, Reddit boards saying, hey, I think I'll do this. I'm going to mimic this trade that someone told me is cool and stick it to the big guy. And they could end up getting in big trouble too. So I just, there's a lot in there.
A CEO of one of the big exchanges a few years ago called it anti-American to short sell these stocks. And it's going to be interesting to hear what the boss of Melvin Capital says to sort of justify the short position that they took in GameStop here. He said, look, we fundamentally believe the price was out of line. This is not a valuable company. And of course, he also described some of the abuse that he got on social media as well, anti-Semitic abuse. There's going to be a lot of questions asked here too about the role of social media and whether there was fundamental market manipulation, because this is a force now in financial markets that we've simply not reckoned with before.
You know, is it the new Long Island pump and dump office, you know, with the phone lines and the aggressive, uninformed traders who are pushing stocks onto people who maybe didn't have the savvy? Is this the new age of that in social media?
The CEOs of RobinHood, Reddit, Citadel and Melvin Capital, along with Keith Gill, better known as Roaring Kitty on social media, will be in the hot seat. Democratic Congressman Gregory Meeks joins us now. He's a senior member of the House Financial Services Committee. Congressman, fantastic to have you with us on the show. Can you be specific? What questions do you hope are answered in the hearing today?
Well, you know, I'm going to be asking and trying to find out what the potential harmful practices that are done by hedge funds, like short selling. So I want to talk and get into that a bit. Potential conflicts of interest between parties that were involved in the events last month, like the relationship between Citadel and RobinHood and the amount of revenue that RobinHood receives by routing its customers through Citadel. Want to also be talking about social media and on our market, the impact of it. Accessibility to the public information for the benefit of retail investors. That's important to me, and how trading apps, like how they operate on social media, and the impact on retail investors. That's important. So I'm looking to listen and hear and try to figure out to make whether or not the rules and regulations that we have in place have kept up with technology of today, and whether there's something in addition that the SEC should be doing, whether there's something in addition that the Congress should be doing. So I'll be listening very attentively and asking questions in those areas.
I think you laid out very cleanly all the different issues to be discussed, and there are so many angles here. I'll just break it down first. The longest opening statement is going to come from the RobinHood CEO, who came under fierce criticism throughout this period. Do you believe that free access to trading platforms like RobinHood encourages excessive risk-taking by those that perhaps aren't skilled enough to do so?
Well, that's what I want to get into. Look, the truth of the matter is, I understand what RobinHood was trying to do is to get individuals into the markets so they have an opportunity to make some money also, so that it should not be open just to the big guy. But that being said, that may mean that there needs to be extra protections to make sure that the less sophisticated investor is protected, and what kind of information is disclosed to them in advance. For example, I know that if you are investing in certain products, they may be riskier than others. And are they steering people to those risky products, or is there opportunities where there's full disclosure? That becomes tremendously important. And so I think that we want to drill down on that to make sure that we are protecting the investor. I want to, for example, we've got this huge wealth gap with different populations in America. I want to close those wealth gaps. I want to make sure that opportunities are available to all, but I also want to make sure that they are protected. And that's what this is really all about for me.
Are you in favor of greater education, maybe even a test that retail investors have to take to prove that they have an understanding, enough of an understanding to invest?
Well, I think that we've got to look at that. How I come at this, we had one of the worst times for me in Congress was the 2008 financial crisis that took place in the United States of America. And that, not comparing apples to oranges, but that largely came because of many institutions doing what we call giving out no-doc loans, no documentation to find out whether the person had the wherewithal to participate in adjustable rate mortgages. Well, there are some products that may or may not be for the less sophisticated investor. And so there should be documentation that may have to flow with that so that we can make sure that we're protecting them.
That everyone's protected. I just want to ask you as well. About the business model here, about why and how Robinhood allowed people to access the financial markets free. And you made the point about the hedge funds, that the market makers, in this case, Citadel Securities and Citadel itself, the CEO, of course, we'll be hearing from. They pay Robinhood for that order flow. And even the SEC data says they provide a price improvement to retail investors, over $3 billion in 2020. Over a quarter of that came from Citadel. It's part of how finance works and giving free access to these individuals. Would you rather have individuals pay to access financial markets and not have that relationship between a market maker, perhaps, and a platform like Robinhood? It's complicated, but it's an important question, I think. I
couldn't agree with you more. It's a very important question. It's something that we've got to really get after it. And I will be asking that question of RobinHood because, they get with the payment for order flow, whether that's the appropriate way and how much does RobinHood get as a result, as opposed to paying something up front, which may be more transparent. So that is definitely something that's I think we have to look at and examine. This is an opening hearing to do just that. We don't want to wait till something catastrophic happens at the end and say, oh, we should have looked at it earlier. We want to start looking at it from a congressional viewpoint today at today's hearing.